going to begin our meeting at 5:03 for Administration and Public Works. Thank you for being here. On Monday, April 24th, can we start with roll call?
Councilmember Burns.
Okay, he was joining us online.
Councilmember Reed.
Here.
Councilmember Kelly.
Here.
Councilmember Harris.
Present.
Councilmember Nusma.
Here.
We have 4 present.
All right, thank you so much. Hopefully, everybody's had a chance to look at the minutes. So I'm calling for approval of the minutes from the April 10th meeting. Do I have a?
I move approval.
It has been moved by Councilmember Reed.
A second.
Seconded by Councilmember Nusma. Are there questions, concerns, or corrections? Seeing none, let's do roll call.
Councilmember Burns.
Roll call on the minutes.
Councilmember Burns, this is for approval of the minutes. Are you available for a vote?
Yes, sir.
And it was at
Are you in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma.
Aye.
It has been moved unanimously for the approval of the minutes from April 10th. Thank you. No one has signed up in person for public comment, and we have a few online, potentially. Oh, and no one online. All right, let's keep moving. No public comment. Taking
Oh,
notes.
my goodness.
All right, so then we're looking at the consent agenda. Are there any items anyone wishes to pull off for discussion?
I'm going to pull A3, please.
A3,
I want to pull off A2.
I'm sorry, say that again, Councilmember Reed, I'm sorry.
A2.
Thank you. Okay, and I'm going to pull off A6 and A7 just because I'd like staff to speak about it. Are there any other items? Going once, going twice. Councilmember Burns, is there anything on the agenda you wish to pull?
No, I'm good, Chair. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Then I look for movement on the consent agenda minus A2, A3, A6, and A7.
I move the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, it has been moved by Councilmember Kelly and seconded by Councilmember Reed. Can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly. Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma.
Aye.
Awesome, thank you so much. So A1, A4, A5, A8 have been moved. I'll open the floor up for discussion on A2. Councilmember
Somebody should move it first.
oh, yes.
Yes.
Let's move
I will
A2.
move item A2, approval of ARPA allocation for Arrington Lagoon patio furniture and lighting.
I will second.
It has been moved by Councilmember Reed and seconded by Councilmember Nusma. Open for discussion. Councilmember Reed?
Yeah, I just pulled this off. I believe, Paul, this was something you worked on with Councilmember Kelly. Is that correct? Yes. And I wasn't necessarily calling you to the podium, but I'm all right. The only reason I pulled this off is, and apologies for not saying this in an email, but I also think it should be stated publicly. I would, in no way do I think anything this is only $61,000. I think everything was likely done correctly. But I do think that when we're looking into designing our lakefront and creating spaces for the entirety of Evanston, I just would hope in the future that, that no part of the lakefront belongs to the first ward or the third ward or the whatever other word, Seventh Ward, that, and I just think that more council members, particularly more diverse set of council members, should have some say in this in the future. So I appreciate the work that has been done. Thank you, Paul and Councilmember Kelly. Just in the future, I'd love to see that.
Yes, come for it.
Madam Chair, is the microphone on? I'm not hearing it.
Yes.
I actually did need to approach the dais. There is an amendment we need to make to the request. The actual funding amount is less than I have stated in the council packet. It's intended to be an amount not to exceed $54,063.51. So it's 54063.51.
I'll move to make the amendment to that dollar amount
Second.
with some grumbles that it's probably still too expensive, but I'll leave it at that.
So, okay, I have questions even before the amendment. Excuse me, are there any other questions as chair? I always want to recognize others before I make a comment. Seeing none. Or did you have a question? Or was that?
I flipped my light back on, but I've
Okay.
already spoken.
Go
so if
for
you
it.
wanna-
Nope, go
Yeah.
for it.
Okay, I did have one more question, or a question rather than just the statement I made earlier. I am curious, this seems like we don't have, I feel like this is placemaking, right? This is what this is. And I feel like the proper committee for placemaking measures is economic development maybe, or I don't know if there really is a committee. And I say that to say, or to ask, how did we come to this, to this conclusion that we're going to use, again, a small amount, I'm fully supportive, but use ARPA for this? How did we get here today?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you for the challenging question, Councilmember Reed, and I would appreciate Councilmember Kelly's involvement in the conversation. This dates back kind of, I'll try to keep it as brief as possible, but it dates back kind of pre-COVID when staff was working with the economic development staff was working with the Parks and Recreation staff to figure out ways to bring in the food establishments into our facilities, right? So Robert Crown, their new kitchen, the lagoon became part of the conversation, Clark Street. So this conversation about kind of equipping or furnishing the lagoon building dates back several years. It's just been kind of on this slow path internally to get there. So at the time, this idea of placemaking that we've really embraced over the last year, especially as the foundation of Thrives didn't exist at the time that the ball started rolling on this. So that's one way I would explain it. And there also isn't, I don't think there is a formal process for placemaking, right? Could it be P&D because it's planning? Could it be economic development because we're talking about, trying to draw crowds to increase quality of life, increase tax revenues? Maybe part of the conversation is how do we want to address these kind of public placemaking decisions moving forward? But that's how I would describe why there's just been a process that's been slow moving for at least 3 years at this point.
Yeah, and last question here, thinking back to that process, and I really do appreciate Councilmember Kelly did bring the Arrington Lagoon issue to economic development very early in the term. And from my recollection of what we determined was, in my view, most important, was almost outfitting the actual Arrington Lagoon building so it was more functional and usable for a small business or some operator to begin work there. And great that we're getting the patio furniture. I would have loved to have seen, a more comprehensive plan, and we can do things piecemeal, but, I think almost the most important thing is making that building functional so we can have, someone operate out of there that is able to sell something more than hot dogs and crackers or something, I don't know.
Yeah, I'd love to be able to respond to that. So there is kind of an order of operations that may not be aligning with how you're imagining it. So we're equipping the patio because we thought even if we can't get our, if you recall, the committee, the Economic Development Committee selected the former owner of Vinic, Sandeep Gehi, we haven't brought a memorandum of understanding to the council yet, but that's still the plan. We've been kind of on a slow roll with Mr. Gehi as he tries to figure out how he wants to operate it. And coincidentally, we had to cancel a meeting last week, a larger group that was going to the building to kind of figure out what it's going to take to make that a food establishment meeting our standards. So that is going to happen, but the order of operations is not, like, I don't want to say backwards because there isn't an established set, but we thought if there is a delay for Mr. Gehi, that we could at least have the patio set up where people could bring their own lunch or iced coffee or things to sit there until we're actually able to run a cafe out of there.
Thank you, and this, I promise, is actually the last thing. Paul, you and I were just speaking recently, and as we're talking about placemaking specifically in this area, we have a parking lot pretty much adjacent to the Arrington Lagoon where folks park their boats. It's the boat launch, and I sometimes wonder if that parking lot is a missed opportunity. It's right against our lakefront. It's underutilized most of the year. Could we shift that allow the boat launch still there, but shift that parking somewhere else and, have, more of a public space, more of an inviting space closer to the lakefront? I know that's a conversation for another day, but I think as we're making this expenditure, just want to put it on folks' radar.
Councilmember Kelly.
Thank you. And thank you, Councilmember Reed, for your questions, and thank you, Mr. Zalmazek, for all your hard work on this. So this, as you mentioned, this has been working on this for a while now, and we had hoped it would start last year. And so I think in terms of building out the space, I think that's also going to be ongoing some negotiations. What percent the city versus the business might put in, if I'm not mistaken, right? Like that hasn't yet been determined either. So, but in terms of the space too, I think we're also looking at potentially year round. I mean, like ice skating with heat lamps and being able to have hot chocolate and go ice skating. So the location, it is a lovely building right now. So I like your idea. I know folks at the dog beach would love to be able to access that parking for the dog beach. I don't know if there's any room for that in the discussions about the lakefront, but I did want to say that. So, and I do think going forward, the lakefront, any sort of placemaking that are like downtown or the lakefront, yeah, I think I would love to figure out a way that we have greater participation from the whole. But this did come to, from a broader cross-section of our council members. And I think this will be lovely, and I think one of our goals, besides placemaking, as the consultant that we hired has pointed out, I think it's really about focusing on our lakefront and our culture to really, those are really special elements of Evanston. This will absolutely highlight our lakefront and draw people to it and to Evanston. So I hope we get this off the ground.
Councilmember Burns.
Yeah, so just wanted to, so I guess first question is the furniture, this is outdoor furniture, right?
Yes.
And will it be anchored in or picked up and moved inside during the evening?
So it was selected furniture that can stack very easily and then lock. So very sturdy furniture that can be moved. You want to be able to move it. And the idea too
Right.
was looking at tables that you could put together if you had a large group as opposed to round tables, and furniture that could
Sure.
be easily stacked at the end of the day.
So the plan is to stack the tables and chairs and lock them within the shelter every day.
Yeah, the tables actually fold. They're really, they fold flat. So
Okay. Yeah, that was it. I especially because of where Arrington Lagoon is, I think it is, it's possible that we could lose some of the furniture if it were kept out overnight. So I appreciate that is functional enough to be folded up and placed inside. That's all the questions I had, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. My question was, for this ARPA, was this already on a plan for ARPA, or is this because we found money? That's what
Correct.
I
It's-
want.
Thank you. I understand the question. So it is not on your current list of priorities.
Okay.
So that's a short answer. There is, when I spoke with Community Development Director Flax about it, there is kind of an interest fund, or, there's additional funding that this could be taken from. Or at the end of the day, it is an economic development initiative, so you could theoretically take it from that. It's really up to the council on how to prioritize that.
Okay. Well, I just want to make sure we're being careful. We know we have some excess money that I've always talked about longevity and planning, and not just nickels here, dimes there, that we long-term plan and say, this is how we're going to spend the money. So that's always been important to me on the council. With that said, are there any other questions or concerns? All right. So right now, we're voting on the amendment, because I held that until we got questions. And that was,
The amendment is to reduce the dollar amount to $54,063.51.
yes. And who was that?
Councilmember Newsma.
Newsmith?
Well,
And you said-
nobody, yes.
Okay.
That's right.
Yes, okay. So it has been moved and properly seconded for the amendment of A2, which is $54,063.50. Can I get a roll call?
51 cents.
51 cents? Oh, I'll give you a penny. I'm sorry. 51 cents. Thank you.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
No.
Councilmember Newsma.
Aye.
So it passes 4-1, and it will move on to council.
But that was the
So that's the-
amendment.
I mean, that was amendment. Oh, so, yep.
Did you mean to vote yes on the
I
amendment?
meant to vote yes on that, so that is 5-0. I apologize, you all. I got ahead of myself. So let me state that again. Can we re-vote? Or
You
can I
can change your
change my
vote.
vote? Yes, I
Yes.
would like to change my vote. 5-0 for the amendment of $54,063.51 moves forward. Now, we are moving, there's a question. Councilmember Reed?
Oh, yeah, Councilmember Burns' question raised something new for me, which was not a huge concern, but is there anywhere else that in the city, I know, for example, we have the furniture that's downtown Evanston and Fountain Triangle now. And I know that downtown Evanston, I believe that downtown Evanston manages shuffling around that furniture. Am I incorrect on that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, in the past, they managed it, but they don't now. So
City staff does that.
we've got Street Plus, who is committed to cleaning them and straightening them up.
And those, I've seen them out there late at night, so they're not removed every night, correct?
Right, so.
Is
we
there,
could
and
just
if
kinda
I can
keep-
just, because just to hone in on the actual question is there anywhere else in the city where we have, outdoor furniture that we every night have to go send staff out to pack up and put away?
Right, so the short answer is no. What we would do in this case is if we are going to lock it up every night, we would expect the operator of the cafe to do that. So number one, Fountain Square furniture generally kind of stays in place. Councilmember Kelly and I also worked on procuring some inexpensive plastic Adirondacks on Noy Street that we initially bought a lock for, but gave up on that because it was kind of stressful on the Noy staff. All the chairs are still in place. They haven't been removed.
Yeah, I'm not worried about the stuff being stolen. I'm more so just worried about the staff time, someone every night having to do that. But if it's going to be managed by the operator, that makes sense. All right, thank you.
All right, are there any other questions? All right, then.
Yeah, Chair.
I'm sorry, I
I'll
didn't see
chime
your
in.
hand.
Just, no, really quick. I didn't have my hand up, but it's, can I be recognized?
Yes.
I just want to underscore, and maybe it's the furniture and the lighting, but this is possibly a $50,000 expenditure. I don't know what the cost of those plastic chairs were on noise, but I bet it wasn't that. And so I just want to emphasize that I think because of the lack of visibility in this particular area, that if we are going to move forward with this, that we should, as Paul said, coordinate, with the operators to put the chairs in, and to be hesitant about putting them out if we don't have a plan to get them back in. That's all, Chair. Thank you.
Councilmember Kelly.
And I just want to point out those Adirondack chairs. Thank you, Paul, for your work on that. An idea, just a relatively small expenditure just opened up that space so much and created such a huge public benefit. The same way I think we're going to see this happen here. And it really is relatively small and just bursts out with, folks love those chairs on Noy Street. That just expanded the whole street, really, really pulled that community in and provided just an expanded venue for enjoyment. So I think we really have to keep that in mind. These relatively small expenditures for things like nice seating in a few places can just, with or without even a vendor there, will make a huge difference, I think, for the community.
Yes, thank you. And I respect that. Any other, before the chair speaks? I just want to be clear, we don't want to do that often. We talk about being fiscally responsible and not just spending randomly. So I want to stick to that, whether that's $10 or 10 million. That's my point. So any other questions or thoughts? Seeing none, we will move to the vote. For A2, approval of ARPA allocation for the Lagoon patio furniture. Can I have a roll call?
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
No.
Councilmember Newsome.
Aye.
And it passes 4-1. Thank you so much for that lively discussion. On to A3. Thank you, Director. A3, approval of fee structure for the use of public space for outdoor dining. Is there discussion? Councilmember Nusma? Yes, I'm sorry.
I'll move approval of item A3.
It has been moved by Councilmember Reed. Seconded.
I'll second.
Thank you, Councilmember Kelly. And open for discussion, Councilmember Nusma.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am going to suggest that we continue, at least with this year, waiving the fees for outdoor dining, and happy to have a discussion about how much to charge for that moving forward. We have all had the opportunity to read the Evanston Thrives report, which I think gives us all the cover we need to do what it takes to support small businesses and encourage outdoor dining. Reading from page 9 of the Evanston Thrives report, small business owners and Evanstonians at large want to see stronger support for local businesses. And the page before that, to paraphrase, Evanston residents have expressed a strong preference for open air seating. So I think the question we should be asking ourselves is not how much does it cost or how much can we charge for outdoor dining, but what can we do to promote more of this in every neighborhood in Evanston, downtown, and all the neighborhood business districts as well. I think the benefits in terms of the quality of life and just making Evanston a more thriving and lively atmosphere is completely in line with the Evanston Thrives report and completely in line with what I would like to do in downtown Evanston and the Fourth Ward business districts. We need more people downtown all times of day, including lunchtime business, especially downtown, but in the evening. So I think it is well worth foregoing a little bit of revenue to encourage the economic vitality and kind of cultural vibrancy of our community. That's something that's worth investing in. We just agreed to spend $60,000 on seats and lights at Arrington Lagoon for essentially the same reason. So I'm going to suggest we forego for this year, any revenue, we not charge for outdoor dining permits, and I guess I'm open to a conversation on what we might want to charge going forward, because there is some cost, lost revenue to the city if we let a parking spot be used for outdoor dining. I would argue that, the sales tax revenue that we bring in over time may even be more than the parking revenue that we would forego, but I think we can justify it in non-economic terms alone, if not economic terms as well. So I've said my piece for now and reserve the right to weigh in again.
Thank you. Councilmember Reed.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Nusma. I am supportive of what you've raised there, waiving the fees for this year. I just want to add my voice to this is exactly what we need to be doing. You mentioned downtown. I think about Howard Street. There are businesses in my ward, particularly Good to Go, that really utilize this, and it's kind of a core part of their model in essence since the pandemic and after. And so this is really important. I've been receiving calls from business owners. And as Councilmember Nusma mentioned, this is more economically productive for the city. Parking is something that I have spoken a lot about here from the dais, and maybe been on the opposite side of many residents with my desire to make sure that we are capturing the appropriate revenue to support the infrastructure that our motor vehicles require. And this is far more productive of a use. And so I'd love to see this happening more and more throughout the city. I encourage businesses to apply for this. I think waiving the fees this year makes sense. But I do think, counterpoint to that we also don't want to just give this space away without being critical as to what is the opportunity for revenue. Again, we have $100 million unfunded infrastructure liability, and we need to start bringing that down. And so we don't want to give away this space. We want to make sure that we're charging an appropriate amount for the space. I think, approving a fee, waiving the fees for this year and coming back next year and figuring it out, I would be supportive of. But I want to make sure that we're putting some real thought into that. And while, it's famous Wilmette, it's nice to beat Wilmette. Let's not just beat Wilmette, let's be smarter and more thoughtful than Wilmette as we design our public spaces.
Councilmember Kelly.
Thank you. I was just going to say, if you want to amend that, Councilmember Nusma, I would certainly support that. I agree. I think we should be doing everything we can to encourage our businesses and to support our businesses downtown so that they can flourish and thrive and be successful.
And I think it's all of our businesses, not just the downtown. Yeah, okay, thank you. Councilmember Nusma, and then Director.
I've suggested some numbers in an internal memo that some of you may have seen. If we're going to waive them this year, we probably don't need to have that conversation about what those numbers are going to be for next year. But because I do support, in the long run, charging something. We can't give away everything for free for everybody, because there is some economic value to this. And if we give away too much for free, it will not be valued in the way that it would be if we charged at least a nominal amount for it. So I think what staff is looking for this evening is just direction for this year, and then buys us some time to come back for next year. And I will point out that 6 of the council members, I'm not sure we were all present, but the Economic Development Committee includes 6 council members. And when this topic came to EDC, it was unanimously, the consensus of that committee was that we should not charge, or we should look for ways to make this happen without increasing prices.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember
Deputy,
Price was
no,
sorry.
we had a question.
Good evening. I just want to make it clear that there is cost associated with this. So there is a permit that is issued, whether they pay for that permit or not, that takes staff time. Staff time does have to go out and check to make sure that they are maintaining the sidewalk open for ADA access. And then our biggest cost is actually, and it doesn't impact all the outdoor dining, but the people that have the chairs in the street, we provide barriers for those, Jersey barriers, and that is, first it was an expense to buy those barriers, but then it's a cost to set them out and bring them back. And I mean, in every site that we go to, we can do one a day, because till we go pick up the barriers, get them on the truck, drop them off, it takes time to do that. So there is costs associated with that. And even when we did waive the fees last year, we did charge a $500 fee to have barriers set up, and our true cost of doing that is about $1,200. So I just want the city council makes a decision, I just want to provide facts so that you were aware of all that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Councilmember Burns.
Yeah, Councilmember Nusma actually mentioned what I was going to express. I just wanted to make sure that this committee understood that the Economic Development Committee, maybe we didn't vote on it, which is why staff is still seeking direction, but it was, as Councilmember Nusma said, there was strong consensus to move forward in this way. Yeah, I guess just for Paul, did we not vote on it? Is that why the amendment wasn't made at Economic Development Committee to waive the fee for this year? Is that why you were still looking to this committee for direction?
So the Economic Development Committee did provide direction. It was unanimous. There was not a vote. It was a discussion. The intent was to guide APW, because this really is an APW matter, because we're talking about establishing fees for the use of the public right-of-way. So that's why we brought it to this committee.
So
And also-
you voted to no fees? I mean, it was,
The discussion was, and I don't recall if you were.
I wasn't
you weren't
there,
at
so.
that meeting. So of the group that was there, there was not a vote, but we went around the table and it was unanimous to essentially do it, to either do it for free or to do it like we did this year, right? So that was the intention that was widely shared. I also want to express one other aspect of this. Some of this is not codified. We don't have in our code a Jersey barrier on-street dining program. So we need to codify it, so we need kind of direction and approval from the council, or direction to bring it back at a later date to codify it, or if we're going to do that tonight, to decide what that framework is. I hope that makes sense.
it does.
Okay.
All right. Next up, I have Councilmember Nusma.
I think I'm done.
Okay, you're
But
like-
let me just conclude what I think, the direction we're giving staff is no permit fees for this year. What about the delivery fees for the Jersey barriers? Are we waiving those too?
Well, let's finish with discussion, because there's a couple more people on discussion. So let's hear that,
Okay.
and then we can
All right.
pull it back together. Councilmember Reed,
Thank you.
and then Councilmember Kelly,
Yes,
and then Burns again.
I'm going to act self-interested for my residents. My inclination would be no, that we don't give away the Jersey barriers this year. But I think about the areas that, have the wider sidewalks, that don't need the Jersey barriers, and, downtown, quite a lot of the sidewalks downtown are very wide. You can have the outdoor seating without having to add new infrastructure. But I think about Howard or some other areas, maybe even in the Fifth Ward, where our sidewalks are a bit narrower. And we are forced to use these Jersey barriers. So I would support for this year, as we're looking into this, waiving the Jersey barrier fee, and then getting into it next year and figuring out. Because if I can ask staff, what is the cost of installation? Has that been mentioned here? I know I've heard that number, but.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. The cost to install the Jersey barriers are $250 is the current charge, and to remove it, $250. That's what we charged last year. We were, no, for the entire setup, $250 to set up, $250 to take down. That's where we got the $500.
What is the cost to the city?
The cost to the city is $1,200.
So it's $1,200 for the city.
Correct.
For how many Jersey barriers?
It depends on the location, so we don't charge per Jersey barrier, we just charge per mobilization, going to set them out and pick them up back up.
Well, then how do you get to the number 1,200 for installation of the Jersey barriers?
That's what it takes for staff to pick up the Jersey barriers, get them off the street and actually align them. Everyone's a little bit different as far as, the distance from the alley, although there is a minimum requirement, and the setup, but on average, it's $1,200. So one could vary $100 here and there, but on average, it's $1,200.
I guess let me ask this then. How do you have an estimate for the cost of the actual Jersey barriers per?
When we purchased them, I don't have it with me right now, but I believe it was probably about $150
Per barrier? Okay, and then, and we just have, just a stock of these barriers at maybe the municipal storage center.
We do have a limited stock at our James Park location, but I don't know quite the number right now, but we do have limited stock.
Okay, and then are there a limited number of permits, or given that we have a limited stock, are there a limited number of street permits that can be issued? Or are we allowing folks, let's say this is really popular this year, a lot of folks use it, and we have to order more barriers?
Correct, we would have to order more.
We would have to order
So
more.
right now, we haven't determined what that number would be. Again, everyone varies from location to location as far as the width and the
Right.
length, so.
And do we have a maximum length?
I do not think we do. I mean, we want to make sure that it fits within the parking lanes that they're asking for, staying away from alleys, railroad crossings, things like that, but I don't think we've set a maximum.
We wouldn't allow to extend beyond the property of the restaurant that's requesting it. We wouldn't.
Okay, so it'd be whatever the face,
Be the most,
yeah,
yes.
okay.
Well, I do want
There's
to,
probably other obstructions between a fire hydrant and an alley or something else that's going to prevent it from being the entire
yeah,
width.
and that is typical. There are some instances where some have talked to their neighbors and said, do you mind if we encroach into your property, in front of your property, as long as the neighbor agrees and city reviews it and approves it, that we have done that, but that's not typical.
Okay, and then last question on this is, how does this, interplay with, I know about sidewalk cafes, Howard Street, but for example, in the 4th Ward and maybe part of the 9th Ward, there's the Custer Oasis, which is kind of its own beast. And so how does that interplay with what we're voting on today?
So currently, right now, we charge Custer Oasis, same thing, to drop off the barriers and then just pick them up at the end of the year. I believe, last year they were invoiced $500, as was the fee $500.
But they didn't use the
But
Jersey
there's
barriers.
no
They-
Jersey barriers.
They
there.
didn't use Jersey barriers, but they used type 3. So just for us to drop off barriers, we submitted that charge.
Okay, and are there any other areas in our city that, I can't think of any, like the Custer Oasis? The answer is no, correct?
Correct.
And what,
Last question.
okay. I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kelly. I'll come back to you. I just want everybody to get a chance. Councilmember Kelly.
Yeah, thanks. The Custer Oasis is wonderful. I do hope we can see more of that happening. I'd also say if we, do we need to reassess, and Paul, maybe you can talk to us a little bit about, I know like with Thomas and Dutch or the Farmhouse Restaurant, there was an issue, like in Wilmette, they charge, I think, $25 for a sidewalk fee. And it has to be, the setup has to be adjacent to the restaurant as long as you allow for a 5-foot clearance to get through. Whereas I think we've had some rules, right, where you, in terms, I'm really glad it worked out beautifully. Thomas and Dutch now has seating adjacent to the restaurant, European style. Can we do that throughout? Like if a restaurant, as long as there's 5-foot clearance, or do we need to pass some sort of an ordinance to make that allowable?
I might not be able to answer this, but I do want to, the origin story on Thomas and Dutch and Collectivo, there are, I think, 4, maybe 5 to 6 locations in downtown that meet a standard. I think it was something like rectangular or square space exceeding 300 square feet or some square foot requirement where you could install a permanent sidewalk cafe, as Laura Bigg's going to back me up here. So she'll give you more details on that, but that's how that exists, and then I'll let Laura fill in the gaps.
I don't have the exact fees that are charged, but there is a city code that allows a restaurant to establish a permanent fixture outdoor sidewalk cafe. That cafe layout is reviewed through the same group that sits on the DAPR committee, and then with recommendations, works its way up and eventually comes to council for final approval.
Thank you. Because it does seem kind of simple if you allow a restaurant to, for a small fee or for no fee, as long as there's a 5-foot clearance on the sidewalk. That seems like a pretty simple rule, that you could set up tables and chairs right outside your restaurant without going through lots of committees. Just a thought. That we might want to consider that to facilitate outdoor dining. And that's how Wilmette does it.
Does that create ADA barriers, though?
Regular sidewalk cafes are done administratively through the planning and zoning group of community development. No, they're not, I'm sorry.
Existing sidewalk cafes
Yes.
can come back and it's done administratively. If it's a new sidewalk cafe, it has to obtain council approval. But after it's approved one time, then it's administratively.
But the biggest concern always is actually ADA and making sure that with various restaurants that they have provisions in place to control litter and garbage and take care of their sidewalk cafe appropriately.
Well, just ADA in general, so that people can get by. We've had people talk about issues with ADA and being accessible on the streets. I just want us to be conscious of that. While we want to have this vibrant place, we want it to be vibrant for everybody to be able to walk and participate. So, okay, thank you. Councilmember Kelly, any other?
No, thank you. That's it. Yeah, I absolutely. And I think sometimes there is an issue with where the cut is in the sidewalk for ADA, that you want to make sure that there's a clear path for that. And maybe that doesn't always happen with the adjacency to the building, but it seems like when possible, it's nice to allow restaurants to set up right outside their door. Thank you.
Councilmember Newsma, did you have that? I've lost control. I'm just admitting that on live TV.
Yes, I think
You're good?
what I've heard tonight is, we're going to continue to make life easy for restaurants this year. We need some more time to codify all the details kind of moving forward, making sure we're writing the right rules that are clear and understandable and simple, and imposing some, minimal fees associated with that. A lot more work needs to be done on that, input from various departments. If we need to make a separate referral on that, I'd be happy to do that. I'm sure I would not have a problem finding co-sponsors. So that will take place before we get to this point next year.
Okay. Deputy
City
Direct-
manager.
City manager.
This item is actually for action, so I would appreciate if you could make an amendment so that you indicate for the 2023 season you want to waive the fees, indicate whether you want to have a barrier delivery and pickup fee or not, and then have a vote on that. And then this could be for discussion. Which committee would you like? I believe the proper committee would be Economic Development to talk about code modifications that you would like for the 2024 season. Although it goes through Economic Development, it is public land that we're using. That's why this came to Administration of Public Works, because we're responsible for the right-of-way. But I guess a referral would be the right thing for 24 season, if you can make that. But if you can please clarify and make a motion for what you would want the 23.
So let's just clarify what that motion is going to be. No cost for the permits. Do we want to charge for the barriers? Like, I don't know if we have a consensus there.
I would like, as I stated, to waive the fees for the barriers, at least this year, and then we can get a grasp on it moving into the future.
Okay, so I will make the motion that for the summer of 2023, we waive the permit fees and we waive the delivery fees for the barriers.
Second.
And then we will, I will also make a referral to Economic Development Committee to work on the policy moving forward for next year.
I will co-sponsor and second that as well.
Okay, so we will deal with one thing at a time, and that will be the amendment. It has been moved and properly seconded to remove all fees and approval for the public space for outdoor dining. I will ask for a roll call.
I had one thing on that. So I would like to make the process easier this year. I don't feel like the city council of Evanston needs to approve each individual sidewalk cafe. I think if, no, I don't think we need to do that.
Right, so if they have a
No,
current.
I know if they
sidewalk-
currently have it, it's administrative, but if it's a new one, it seems kind of silly that we would be approving a side. So is it possible through this resolution this year to just make that administrative so we can kind of move this along this year?
I feel like that motion is out of order, so let's put that on referral and bring that back.
Can I,
I feel like we have amendment already on the table, that we should deal with that and then put that on the table in 2 weeks.
sure. If I can, just a point of information from
Sure.
legal, is that even possible? I know that, I don't know how deeply codified this is, but is it possible through this resolution to waive the requirement that it would be approved by council and allow that to be administrative action?
And it's not actually a resolution.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Reed. I think I would just have to look into that, and then get back to the council. I'm just not sure on how it's codified, so I'd like an opportunity to look at the code.
Thank you.
I just think that's the appropriate way to do it, to make sure that we're not making decisions that reverberate some other way. All right, so we're voting on the amendment? No, roll call, thank you.
On the amendment.
On the amendment, we're, right, roll call on the amendment.
Councilmember Burns,
Aye.
Councilmember Reed,
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly,
Aye.
Councilmember Harris,
Aye.
Councilmember Newsome.
Aye.
So the amendment passes 5-0, that we will remove the fee structure for public space for outdoor dining. Now we will move on the
Item A3,
A3, that we will,
approve the fee structure of nothing.
oh, okay, that's what I'm like, what do we, okay. So A3 is that we will approve a zero fee structure for use of public space for outdoor dining. Can we please have roll call?
Councilmember Burns,
Aye.
Councilmember Reed,
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly,
Aye.
Councilmember Harris,
Aye.
Councilmember Newsome.
Aye.
It has passed that businesses will not have a fee for outdoor dining or for the Jersey,
Barriers.
I was going to call it Jersey Shores. I knew that was a TV show.
Just want to make sure everybody understands that you still have to submit for a permit so that the staff knows where these cafes are going up. It will cost you anything to get that permit, but we need to have the permit so we can go out and make sure ADA compliance is being adhered to and things like that, and all the other rules of the sidewalk cafe.
Good point. Thank you for stating that. So businesses listening and friends of businesses, you still have to apply for the permit to make sure that everything is done appropriately. Thank you. A6, approval of a sole source contract award with Greenlee and Henson LL for water plant reliability project. Can I get a motion?
So move.
Second.
Is there any discussion? I just wanted staff to come up and speak to this, just for clarity. Maybe city deputy, somebody. Just to give clear understanding, a few minutes. Both, either.
Hi, I'm
Hi.
Paul Moyano, Senior Project Manager. with the city. This is speaking directly about the sole source issue?
Yes.
Yeah. So this relates back to the electrical project. It's a significant electrical rehabilitation project at the water plant. Part of the project involves two major components of the project are building new space for medium voltage switchgear and building new space for two new generators. As we were looking for space to build out, we realized that a retaining wall that's going to continue being adjacent to new space that we're building is in poor shape. It's an old retaining wall. It's been fixed by staff over the years to keep it in good condition, but there's no engineering records to really understand the wall, its strength, or anything else to be able to build and design new structures adjacent to it. So for that reason, we need to design and replace it. Having it as a sole source contract to the engineer that's currently working on the project allows us to integrate the design of that retaining wall with the other expansion that's needed at the water plant for this project. So it would be probably the most efficient way to deal with it, both engineering, construction, and overall pace of the project.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Nusma.
Or Moyano, as long as you were up there. Question regarding the scope of the electric work, and we are designing this and constructing it so it will be ready for solar panels that are hopefully following as a separate initiative.
Yeah, so that's an issue that's under the change order. One of the issues with the change order is it okay to start talking about that?
Yes, we can put A6 and A7 together.
Great. So one of the main issues with the change order is adding the replacement of the 480-volt switchgear to this project. And doing that would allow us to better accommodate solar panels and electric vehicle charging stations in the future. Currently, the 480 switchgear that's in place is marginally sized, even for current loads. That switchgear has really grown organically over time. And so when we had the engineer designing the medium voltage switchgear come in and take a detailed look at that, really just saw a good opportunity to replace it and bring it up to current standards as far as safety, metering, and being able to then accommodate some of these future uses that we're looking at.
Great. And as for where we're finding the money to do this, we've saved some money in a lead paint removal process or project. Where was that project? Where is that project?
Yeah, that was a lower priority project that we've identified that we were hoping to get going this year. We had $300,000 budgeted for that this year. That was initially $150,000 to perform an inventory of all of the conduit throughout the water plant, identify what needs to be painted, come up with a long-term plan, and then if that went well, we had $150,000 budgeted to begin that painting process. At this point, it looks like that inventory could be done for around $50,000 or less. So we've got the budget available.
Great. So that was all inside the water plant.
All that work is inside the water plant,
Great.
correct?
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, I call for a vote on A6.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma?
Aye.
It has been, it passes, A6 passes, and last but not least, A7, and you kind of spoke to that and answered my questions. Are there any other questions to A7? Seeing none, can we have roll call?
Well, we need to move it.
Sorry, I'm sorry, can we have a motion to move A7?
Madam Chair, I'll move approval of the change order number 1 to the agreement with Greeley and Hanson for the water plant 4160 volt electrical system reliability project.
And do you want to move A8 as well?
Say it again?
Do you want to move A8?
Was A8 not on consent?
A8 was on consent.
A was on
Oh,
consent.
I'm sorry.
Would you like second?
I'm sorry, A6 and A7. Second.
All right, thank you. It has been moved and properly second. I will ask for questions again. Seeing none, can we have a roll call?
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma?
Aye.
All right. A7 passes approval of the change order for 1. Last item on our agenda is items for discussion. D1, discussion of city council approval for excess employee payments. Is there a movement or discussion?
I will move discussion. This is Councilmember Kelly's referral.
Thank you.
Second?
All right. It has been moved and properly second. Is there discussion?
Somehow I missed this last page. Are there any questions as to what this pertains to?
Well, I figured you'd tell us since you preferred it.
Right, so this is, so this would be, for example, I think we all pretty much assumed, many of us who took seat during this term, that payouts that exceeded, I thought this would go to rules, but payouts that exceeded 25,000 would come to council for a vote in terms of if somebody were either, if an employee were quitting. So this would require council council action if there is going to be a payout beyond 25,000, which is pretty much the limit for the city manager's office, so that we're not left without any ability to weigh in on payouts.
Okay. You're done?
Yeah, I think I'm done.
Okay.
For the moment.
Councilmember Reed?
Yeah, I think this referral was made before the co-referral mechanism that we have now. But I understand what Councilmember Kelly is pushing here. There have been, just as Councilmember Kelly said, just in this term, they're usually smaller dollars. They're usually under 100,000, somewhere around 100,000. But we've had just in this term, and as the clerk I witnessed in the last term, a number of payouts to former employees that were unilaterally approved by the city manager, not our current city manager, but previous city managers. And I think, let's just name it. We think about the Lakefront scandal, or the Lakefront tragedy that happened here with the particular female employees a few years ago, and for many years. And I think some of us were not, and I think some community members were not enthused to hear that in some cases there were payouts to employees who were a part of causing harm or allowing harm to persist in our city. And what I would be interested in seeing with this referral is just a mechanism that, one, I think there needs to be an analysis of certainly our home rule authority when it comes to employee, discipline or employee contracts, whatever the case may be. But, one thing that is very clear, this council and every council in the state of Illinois has the power of the pocketbook or the purse string. And we have set by ordinance a limit that the city manager is able to expend, which is $25,000 without council approval. The way that ordinance is drafted is in a manner that is somewhat that leaves out these kind of payments. It's very clear that if it was a contract or a procurement or a whole host of things, that's where that limit comes into place. I think we could clarify that ordinance to ensure that if there is a payout to an employee that is beyond their time as an employee here in Evanston, that the city council should either approve it or certainly should have a briefing on that in executive session or an open session if that's ever appropriate to make sure that we are all on the same page. And so I think that's the spirit of this referral, and so I would be supportive of moving in that direction.
All right. Councilmember Newsman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to hear from the legal department, their interpretation here. And reading the memo, it seems, it says this referral may be redundant. But Attorney Ruggie, if you could weigh in and tell us what our legal boundaries are here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councilmember Newsma. Alex Ruggie, Deputy City Attorney. So in reviewing the memo that was drafted by Corporation Counsel Cummings, basically, for any time that there's a severance package given, the package is paid out of the already approved salary, which is approved in the yearly budget. So that's usually approved for the remainder of the year. And then if there's any amount beyond $25,000 of the remainder of the year that was already approved, that would have to come before City Council. So I think that was the explanation that was given, is that the severance packages that are given or that are referred to here were already approved as part of the salary package in the budget, so it's within the city manager's authority to negotiate that because it's already been approved. And then anything, if it goes beyond $25,000, it would have to come in. And I agree with Councilmember Reed that the city code as it's currently drafted is a bit ambiguous. So it doesn't specifically direct severance packages. It's, the city manager has the authority to purchase goods and services up to $25,000, but beyond $25,000 has to seek approval by the council. So it would be recommended that if the council and this committee looks to amend that and clarify, we should amend the city code in that sense.
Councilmember Kelly.
Yeah, so I think we've had several payouts, some very large amounts, that I was shocked to find that we as a council would not approve, that this was already a done deal, that this had already been signed off on well beyond 25,000, and there was debate that this was not a goods and service. So I think it needs to be clarified that any payout of over 25,000, absolutely, we should be making that decision as the elected representatives. I think that needs to be stated. I think our residents need to know that this is something that we will be partaking in, that this isn't just, staff allotting chunks of money, large chunks of money to colleagues as they leave. I think, 25,000 is, even that is questionable, whether that should even be allowed, quite frankly. But given that that's, sort of the tradition here, that's why I say at least anything that exceeds 25,000, I feel very strongly that we absolutely should be approving that, wherever the point is in the year, whether it's, there's a remaining balance to end out the year or not. I think that's neither here nor there. Thank you.
Councilmember Reed.
Thank you. If there's seemingly no further discussion on this, I would move that we bring back an amendment to this ordinance in a month or two. Is that, I don't know what the time frame, maybe for the law department to add a few words in there to clarify this, and then we can have a deeper discussion once that language is in front of us. So I will move that we bring item D1 back as an ordinance to the first meeting in June, second meeting in June, whatever makes sense for folks.
Okay, I'll second that.
Second meeting in June.
And she seconded. All right. So we have a motion that is to bring this discussion to create or solidify our code, to amend it with better language to our June meeting, second meeting in June. 26th. Thank you, the 26th of June. I'd like to have roll call for that.
Councilmember Burns,
Aye.
Councilmember Reed,
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly,
Aye.
Councilmember Harris,
Aye.
Councilmember Newsman.
Aye.
Thank you, that passes and will be on the agenda for June 26, 2023. Having no other business before us, I adjourn this meeting at 6:06. Thank you all. P and D will start at 6:11. Thank you.